Paying it forward, cultivating a new cybersecurity workforce. Today we have Marcy McCarthy. She will be our moderator and introduce our panel. Marcy McCarthy is the CEO and president of TEN, an information security executive networking and relationship marketing firm. With more than 20 years of business management and entrepreneurial experience, McCarthy founded TEN's flagship program, the Information Security Executive of the Year, ISE, program series, which is lauded by the IT industry as the premier recognition and networking program for security professionals in the U.S. and Canada. Marcy?
Thank you so much. Oh, I got one, but I'll turn it over to these lovely ladies. Thank you so much for having me today. How many of you, I'm actually in awe of the view outside. You guys, this is pretty cool. I have to say, this is one of the coolest places to be at a conference. Usually we're stuck in a hotel room or ballroom, right, with no windows outside, and we don't even know what the weather looks like outside. But here, we're at the beach, so pretty awesome. So thanks again for joining us. I just want to say, ladies, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We're very honored to have all of you sharing your insights with us. Would you mind go ahead down the row here and just introducing yourselves and sharing a little bit about you?
So hi, I'm Wendy Nather. I lead the advisory CISO team at Duo Security, which is now part of Cisco. And I make stuff up really, really fast in security for a living.
And you're really good at it. So, hi everyone. Galina Antova. I'm a co-founder of Clarity. So Clarity is in the industry of operational technology networks, which is critical infrastructure networks. So pretty hot topic, and that has been my life mission for the last 8 years. Prior to starting Clarity, I started and ran the industrial cybersecurity unit at Siemens. So I've been in that kind of specific subset of the industry for a while and very, very passionate about it.
Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marion Merritt, and I'm with NICE, which is the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, and that's part of NIST. And I just learned something that we have in common. My first job after college was at Siemens. Small world, big company. And before I was with the federal government, I worked at Symantec. And I'm based here in Los Angeles, so I didn't have too bad a drive this morning.
Which is amazing for LA.
You're right.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Sunshine Steffens. I am the CEO of IOActive. We are a cybersecurity research and consultancy. And I'm really excited to see so many guys in the audience today.
I know, this is
welcome.
Actually very awesome. Welcome.
Thank you.
So welcome to our Paying It Forward, Cultivating a New Cybersecurity Workforce. I think many of you know that there's a significant workforce gap out there, specifically around there's various estimates, but in 2018, the ISE Squared folks tried to quantify it, and they're saying that there's 3 million unfulfilled jobs. And I also, in addition to TEN, I own a boutique executive placement and information security recruiting firm. And we're seeing a lot of positions that are just going unfilled or being open for months on end. And you know, there's the consequent downstream for that for solution providers is their products aren't getting implemented in a timely manner. The companies that are buying these products and services are also, you know, behind the 8 ball. And you know, when you see these job openings out there, it's an opportunity for a hacker to sort of have an invitation of what technologies you're using and what things aren't being paid attention to. But as it relates to women, we're seeing that some marginal improvements, actually, in that 24% of the current cybersecurity workforce compared to previous years, 11%, is women. So I'm actually very encouraged. And we have a stage full of awesome women here today. On the minority front, or the millennial Gen Y folks, I should say, their interest in cybersecurity is increasing. Has gone up from 20% to 35%. So it is really programs like this and people like yourselves that are really making some investments into our cybersecurity future. But we've got a lot to still do, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So first and foremost, how do each of you encourage diversity within your enterprise? And what incentives do you give for women and minorities and students that might be looking to apply at your company or take advantage of, your mentorship? Are you on?
Okay. So one of the things that I think one of the reasons why the percentage seems to be going up of women in the cybersecurity population may not be just because there are more women who are entering it now, but that we have widened the definition of what cybersecurity is. It is not just hacker boys. So as an example, 20 years ago when I was promoted to director and when I was working for a Swiss bank, they gave me a personal assistant because that came with the position. And I thought, I don't really need a personal assistant. And the woman who they had hired for me was really, really smart. So I just put her in charge of my access control group. And today, she runs about half of the cybersecurity at Standard Chartered Bank. So, we have so many sources of people who are already in the field, but we're just not counting them. Or we need to describe to people that there are so many different roles that count under the guide of cybersecurity. At Duo, for example, we have one designer for every 5 software engineers, because design is that important to us. So there are so many things that count as security, and that's also how we expand the tent to bring more diverse people in.
Thank you. That was a very innovative answer. I love how you're already thinking outside of the box. So,
absolutely. So in my company, it's a relatively small company, about 130 people. So fortunately at this stage, we don't have those kind of challenges of the bigger companies in recruitment. But one very simple thing that has worked for us is just kind of be conscious of the composition of the teams, right? So on an ongoing basis, first of all, I'd be organizing myself smaller events that are women only, and we just make it kind of, almost as a joke, openly. We joke about it in the company that it's, there are certain events that are women only, and so, but it's meant to kind of highlight the fact that we need to think about what's the team composition. Everything down to the researchers, the developers, the team leads. I just have the conversations with the people that are leading those teams on an ongoing basis and asking them, first of all, reflect on how many women, not just women, but, in general, people from diverse backgrounds, not just coders, as you mentioned, but you have on your team. And if you don't have that, where are you recruiting from? Is it just from your network, right? Is it just from the friends, the hacker friends that you're hanging out with? How do we open that up? So it's a very practical conversation, but just bringing visibility into the numbers. And when we sit around the table and we see, okay, from 7 team leaders, we only have, 1 woman, well, that's a problem. Are we actually looking at that? So just make it transparent.
So my perspective on this topic is, boy, have we made headway in just a couple of years.
I would agree.
Because it's not just the numbers, because as you point out, there may be some dispute about how they're defining what a cybersecurity professional is, and let's put that aside for now. When we first started talking about this, even at a presentation here at this summit a couple years ago, people were saying, well, if we focus on women and minorities, are we pushing other people, more traditionally known standard people in the field, are we pushing them aside? And I think we can all accept and agree that there's so much need for talent here that we're just getting a bigger playing field, and there's room for everybody. And I just don't hear that voice anymore, that person who says, why are you doing all these special programs just for women, when they realize that there are programs and scholarships and jobs for all of us. To that point, though, this continuing conversation extends to the work that we do at NICE. One of our strategic goals is really to focus on diversity and inclusion throughout the industry. And so we think about the visuals of things like panels. So it's kind of funny, to have an all-women panel, but the one just before was all men. And at least in our own conferences, we really try to avoid the dreaded manel, right, the all-male panel. But we also encourage people to think about their recruiting process. So you mentioned the internship, for example. If you don't pay your interns, you will only get people of wealth. All right? So if you want people from more diverse economic backgrounds, you got to pay your interns. If you don't want just white males, think about your recruiting bonuses, because then people refer their friends. If you want to open the field as widely as possible, think about the colleges you recruit at, and don't just go to 5 or 6 with really elite programs, because there's a lot of great people going through community colleges right now in cybersecurity. So just some of those thoughts of ways to continue the progress that we're all making.
Jennifer.
Yeah, and we're pretty lucky. We're about the same size, about 130 people, but have a very globally diverse team. Women in every department, and really kind of try to celebrate the differences between the teams and the differences between the individuals and the folks we have living in different countries, and celebrate all the different aspects of diversity. So we really work hard to bring various teams together based on outside interests. We have some folks who really love to bowl. So, we bring together kind of cross-functional teams to do more outside-the-box things and let them get to know each other outside of the company so that they can learn more about each other. We have a team around the world. We make sure to bring everybody to the different offices, get to see sort of the differences between the offices and the people, so that we all can celebrate the differences between us rather than just focus on working with the 5 people next door to us.
In my company, 10, ANISC Talent, majority of all of us are women. So we're not, there's some of us are more technical than others, so we would kind of flavor towards we are a marketing company per se, but the interest of cybersecurity is tantamount, and it's really what we brought into the fold. And some of the ladies that work with us, we're not by nature cybersecurity professionals, but we've been teaching them about the cybersecurity field, and there's a multitude of functions, and they're really inspired because we're mostly women at our company, and because they see other women there as well. Which kind of leads to my next topic, is about being leaders. We're all leaders of our respective organizations, and I would imagine that all of you would say being a leader is not faint at heart, right? It requires constant grit, determination, vast knowledge base, wearing multiple hats, and thinking outside of the box. So, what would you share here today in terms of your backgrounds and experiences? And I know it's a very broad question, but in terms of what it takes to be a leader in the security industry, and doing so as a female. You want to start, Jennifer? Since we ended with you, we'll go this way. Go ahead.
Sure. I would particularly say you could really come from and rise from any background. I actually got my degree in psychology, got my start in sports marketing, and made the leap into security about 20 years ago when the tech boom was happening. And it just looked shiny and interesting, and I really benefited from working with, at the time, all-male research teams. Being in marketing, felt that because I'm extroverted and I was going to stand in the front at the booth, I needed to understand what I was talking about. So they spent nights and weekends really kind of helping me understand the technology and bringing me up to speed. And over time, they really respected what I brought to the table. I obviously respected what they brought to the table, and was able to kind of get into that kind of inner circle of security, so to speak, working with, in my career, the kind of elite hackers of the world. But then as I grew up in the industry, I got my chance to work in a number of startups, which you wear a dozen hats and learn everything about business, and it's an MBA crash course like nothing else. So when I finally got to IOActive, came on just on a contract to help out with a few things. And our founder, who knew that he loves the company but is a hacker at heart and didn't want to continue to run the company, kind of pushed me towards the CEO role, which was super scary, and I never thought I would do anything like it. But no regrets, I don't look back. But you can really come from, any background, and it's really important to be passionate about what you do, to really think about the people that are on your team, bringing together the right teams, working with, really closely with your clients and customers, staying focused. No, it's not for the faint of heart. You definitely have to put the company before yourself most of the time. But do find work-life balance. It's critical.
I would agree with that. Words of wisdom there.
Well, a little bit of imposter syndrome right now. I am not currently in a leadership role, and when I compare, there's a lot of great wisdom you're going to get from these folks. But when I think back to when I ran big teams, when I was back at Symantec, I had some pretty big international groups. I'm always willing to say I don't know and to ask questions, because you started out, you said psychology, marketing, and ran the Norton antivirus business on a global basis. So, there was a lot of great, intelligent, smart people with lots of diverse backgrounds that I needed to know what they were doing, and they needed to help me understand. And I just, I'll swallow my pride any day of the week if it means we can all do a better job. So
that's actually a very humble statement that you just made, because a lot of people have larger-than-life egos, regardless of gender, especially even in this space, because if there's the background and foundation of researchers and executive or entrepreneurs and everything like that. And I admire that statement, so thank you.
We all have imposter syndrome.
Yes.
Yes.
So on that topic, actually, I'm going to disagree a little bit. So being humble is awesome, but I think that as women in security and technology in general, we're too humble. Okay. We compare to, and I'm not advocating for larger-than-life egos. I think we have way too much of that in our lives, all kinds of political lives. But there's all kinds of data out there that, if you just objectively look at the data of abilities and skills, and it's not just for women, by the way, it's for any kind of group that is underrepresented, right? That we do a disservice to ourselves in that specific category. And so for me, actually, the confidence in my own ability, especially, being in security, cybersecurity, industrial cybersecurity, which is like, talking to 60-year-old engineers when you're like, 1/3 of their age, and they're like, what do you know about anything? You don't even know how to spell ICS. So I think that to that component, for me personally, what has worked is just having confidence in my own ability. Not, confidence that has no evidence, but actually trying to imitate, so to speak, a little bit the leaders that I admired, and in a lot of cases, those were male leaders, because they had the confidence to actually stand up and say what they believe in and what they can do. And in today's world, yes, I think we've made a great progress. However, there's still quite a lot of bias, and that bias is affecting us on a daily basis, right? I'm not going to get into like the negative aspects, but just on a positive note, I think it really helps women and minority groups when they have the confidence in their abilities, and we should have a little bit less of an imposter syndrome, because all of us here on this stage and all of you in the audience have done amazing things, and we just have to recognize ourselves for that. And it's also helpful when people in leadership position recognize us for that as well. So sorry about the controversy.
This is good. No, I mean, we shouldn't all have the same viewpoint in mind. We are all with different backgrounds, and I think everyone's here to, hear from different perspectives. That's what's so great about a panel. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I was personally inspired by Allison Miller, who is currently VP of Security Engineering at Bank of America. One of the things is she just came out and said, I think on a panel one time, my expertise is in blank. And I thought that is just so cool, and it's not overselling, it's just, stating a fact, and so I try to think of that myself. In my own experience, as I grew up to be a leader, I was often just offered opportunities. And I think it's important to realize that you don't necessarily have to be ready for them. You just have to be willing You have to say, okay, I'll try it. Sure. All right. Why not? Now, having said that, I'm really cognizant of the fact that I've been offered a lot of opportunities, and I've had a lot of unearned privilege based on the fact that I am white and I have an American English accent, and I have the background that I've had. I have not had any education in security. I was a liberal arts major, and I didn't get my degree. So for underrepresented and minorities, it's not often, they don't get those opportunities just handed to them. That they have to go out and get all the certs and all the degrees and everything just to get to the same place where somebody's going to hand them those same opportunities that I kind of got for free. So we have to be really cognizant of that it's not that nobody needs, a certificate or anything like that. Unfortunately, some people have to work harder to prove themselves, and that's something that we have to work on.
Did you want to add something? Oh, okay. Thank you. Let's just take this a little bit deeper. Many of us here are more on the technical side, and traditionally, cybersecurity folks are thought to be very technical, probably sometimes even more technical than even IT people, right? Because of just sort of the cryptology, some of the research, the foundation of our industry, right? But as companies and organizations have evolved, some of the fundamentals of the soft skills are coming to light. But what I'm seeing out there sometimes is there's a deficiency, whether it's about lack of empathy or emotional intelligence, the ability to work within teams, because traditionally some folks are more introverted, so they're not as interactive. Also, interestingly, because some of the folks in our industry are coming in from law enforcement or the military, there's some adjustment into the commercial world. And that, to me, is also a different aspect of diversity that we're bringing to the table, right? So it's beyond our gender, it's beyond the color of our skin, it's bringing forth different minds of thought, experiences, and backgrounds. So how do we bring those types of people into the folds, teach them some of the softer skills that are not on the job description per se, but are really important in fitting in a culture at a company and rising, and if they choose to be and want to be a leader? Would you like to start?
Well, in my experience, these so-called soft skills are they're basic leadership skills, and they're absolutely essential and they get more and more important proportionally as you rise, in the leadership ladder. So I think one problem that we have to deal with is the fact that, 30 years ago, when people wrote software, we were all writing it for one another, and it was a very small community, and we all had the same level of knowledge, and we could say that things were intuitively obvious because we all had the same background knowledge. That's not the case anymore. We write for the world, and so that's why it's so important to bring in so many different people, because you can't design systems and build systems for people who you don't have on your staff. You will not understand half of the stuff that you have to build in to the systems. The other thing that I think is really important to keep in mind is that a lot of people, a lot of women, a lot of underrepresented people have always been there. We just haven't noticed them or haven't brought them forward. And just because you're seeing somebody for the first time, it doesn't mean they're new to the field. That may have been there all the time and you just never noticed them. There was one guy who was on a shuttle bus with me, who was a young guy who was talking to me about something at RSA, and he mentioned Telnet, and he said, "Do you know what Telnet is?" And I said, "Son, how old are you?" So it is very annoying for those of us who have been in the field for a really long time to be treated as if we were new, and to assume that just because we're bringing in more diverse people, they're all starting from the beginning and they also all have to be taught. A lot of them don't have to be taught. They just have to be included and invited. And that's the inclusion part of diversity. They say that diversity is inviting people to the dance, and inclusion is actually asking them to dance.
I love that.
Yeah.
That is. I'm going to have to borrow that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
okay, Wendy.
You have to bring them in and dance with them. You have to hand over some of your power to them, That's what real inclusion is about. So all of this has to come into play.
Well, I have had my own struggles. Actually, I come from the opposite direction. So computer science, technology, I was actually never in like the soft skills category. So it was challenging for me as I started my career. It was all about, we got to get this done. This is the technology, soft skills and kind of experience and relationship. That wasn't really top of mind. So I had benefited a lot from having people on my team that are much more experienced than me, who had basically taught me that in any kind of business, I mean, cybersecurity is not an exception, you actually have to start with a relationship, right? You have to start with a relationship, because if the team is not working together, we might be writing just the most brilliant code and we might be creating the most amazing technology, but if you don't relate to what people want to get out of this exercise, because we're all doing it for different reasons, you're actually not going to be very successful. And that, I must admit, early on in my career, that was just kind of a shock, because I was like, what? I don't understand, because, here's the project, this is what we need to do, why do we need to waste 2 days on an offsite? But that also helps incorporate everyone else's kind of viewpoint. And really important to that is why people do what they do, their motivations, right? So I think that as a leader, if you uncover that, if you understand what makes them tick as people, you will get much better code, much better, dedication from them, and just kind of, going along with the mission. So that was my own personal lesson, and a very painful one.
So I would just talking a little bit about soft skills. I think for a lot of people that come from the non-technical side, it is the soft skills that get you on the technical team. So, for example, at one point I was managing a team of developers without, the last code I wrote was Fortran in college. So it wasn't my my legitimacy as a coder that made me their manager, but that also put it was a challenge for me to learn, how do you motivate developers when you don't have the legitimacy of being able to check their code over with them and give them guidance? Mm-hmm. So you have to draw on a different set of skills. And, of course, you also have to have good relationships throughout the network of the leaders in the development side to be able to say, coach me as well. Teach me how I can be a good manager for these people and get the best out of them. And, without a doubt, those soft skills maybe put me in unexpected roles as I, have continued on my career, but I'm grateful for them.
Jennifer? Yeah, good point. And I actually agree with what Wendy said right in the start. The soft skills really are a lot of leadership skills. And as we become leaders, we really do have to lead by example, be able to make sure that we are have empathy, that we are building relationships internally, that we are speaking all the different languages that our teams are speaking. And I would say as we start to try to bring people up and, not always just teach, but expose them to more experiences that require soft skills. We as an industry historically do a much better job talking to each other than we do to the business or the business units. Just going to very technical security meetups means you're only going to deal with very technical people. Get out, network, expose yourself to more of the industry as a whole, the business as a whole. Go to lunch with somebody not on your team, right? Start to learn more about the industry you're in, the mission of your business, the people around you, what their goals are, and the soft skills kind of develop over time, including the empathy usually.
Jennifer, that is a perfect segue into my next topic. So
I must have known what you were thinking. We've known each other too long.
We have. We're never in the same place at the same time, so it's really awesome to have you up here with me. Networking and security, and that's not about technical networking, right? Networks is the other networking. I like that too. You guys are giving me some more ideas for future stuff. So it's the other networking. Also, from the earlier preface that I made, just not fundamental to cybersecurity technology professionals. It's taking them really outside of their comfort zone. But with tools certainly like LinkedIn out there, the self-promotion of oneself and their building of a business network, is becoming a lot more acceptable. But it's still for a lot of folks outside of their comfort zone. But to your point, it is about part of being a leader. If you're going to, manage a department, run a company, you have to connect with, the team that you're working with. You've got to have a network out there. You might have investors, as I know you do, right?
We do not.
You do not. Okay, very.
We've never taken any investments.
Oh, that's awesome. I have not either, actually. And there's something to be said about that. There's pros and cons, but yes.
For the record, I love my investors, okay? Because I do have a lot of them.
Which is awesome. That's awesome.
In my past life.
But all those types of things play a part to who you are and where you can go for mentorship or how you're perceived. And like I said, I want to take you guys to a story. I was attending an ISSA Metro Atlanta chapter meeting. This is many, many years ago. And it was probably the first time that I had really attended. I joined the organization and attended. I was like, well, I really want to get out there and meet security professionals. So I get there for the networking part. It was a classroom-style setup, sandwiches and snacks and everything. It was sort of the end of the day. So last thing I would want to be doing is sitting down, and you might be hungry, but, the aspect of more like heavier foods, so really was hard to walk around with it versus finger food. It was interesting. Everyone was seated, and the content portion of the speaker probably wasn't going to speak for an hour and a half. And nobody was just talking to each other except maybe to the person next to them, but that was kind of even then. They were just like eating. And I was like, well, okay, I'm at a networking event, but no one's networking. They're just, hanging out there. So, I took it upon, I was like, I was very inspired. So in a future program, I thought it would be awesome to make the whole event about networking and bringing security officers, CISOs, and security executives that are a little more extemporaneous and made them hosts of the program and forced them, it had finger food, and had them really talk to each other. And it was so amazing to watch, first of all, the security executives interface with, security professionals that are up and coming and may or may not have those interactions. And it was just a different life form. And it was so cool. And, we do that. At all of our ISE programs, whether it's ISE Private Dinner or at ISE Executive Foreman Awards, we have networking components built in throughout the program because it's so important to talk to each other. I also do a LinkedIn class for disadvantaged young technology professionals through a program that an organization called TechBridge in North Atlanta, Goodwill puts on, and we're teaching them to use LinkedIn, but as a follow-up or enabler to building out their professional networks. So I'd love to hear from all of you how you've approached building your professional networks over the years and what you could offer these folks in tips and techniques that could work, whether it's being interpersonal and having conversations and not being, worried about going up to somebody or, following up through on LinkedIn or, there's a common connection and everything like that. Would you like to start, Jennifer?
Sure.
Okay.
A very good topic. I have been to some of the networking events where networking is very, very challenging. But it is really important, and building a good network, I think, is critical to success in the long run, and especially when you're starting out. For those of us that have built networks and kind of have newer members of our teams, it's important to help them as well. Take them to events with you, right? Help them, introduce them to people, show them how you do it. Don't expect young, especially introverted people to be able to walk up to a group of strangers. But on the flip side, when you do go alone, understand that these networking events are networking events, and the vast majority of the people who are there, whether they're good at networking or not, do want to meet other people. So sometimes it's hard, but it's important to step out of your comfort zone and walk up. Even if it looks like a small circle of people, if you kind of just walk up and ask, oh, can I join you? Most of the time they're going to say yes. We don't go to networking events to have discussions that should have an NDA or a closed door. We just don't always necessarily know to step back and be on the lookout. And if you are in a group and you see somebody walking up, open the circle a little bit, make it look a little more inviting. And I am a big advocate for LinkedIn. When you meet people, even if briefly, try to connect with them after, right? Grab a card if you can, but find them on LinkedIn, send a personalized note with your invite so they remember it, right? Take a little time, and then nurture your connections. If you're going into a city, spend a few minutes on LinkedIn, poke on a few people, see if you can grab coffee, a drink, lunch, whatever might fit in your schedule, or just a chance to say hi. You really need to invest in your network, and they will help invest back in you.
Wow, I love so many good ideas, and I especially love the one about bringing some younger people with you, because networking skills are learned and they're not taught anywhere. And as an example, I've gone a few times down to Camp Pendleton to do their career fairs, so I'm not there to hire, so I'm there to sometimes do resume review or whatnot. And when you talk to these young soldiers about using LinkedIn, it goes against everything they've been taught in the military.
Yeah.
Wait, you want me to talk to somebody who's a senior leader in the industry, and I've got nothing to give them? Yeah, you're just going to send them a note on LinkedIn and say you'd like to connect, and that's okay. So we're all beyond that. But
same with the class that I teach to the TCP students, they say similar things. They don't have the military background, but they're intimidated.
They're intimidated
to reach out. So we actually give them some sample copy to use in the. So for all what what we're talking about, how many of you guys use LinkedIn? I should say everyone.
Everybody.
Okay, good deal. So there's a feature when it asks you to make a connection request, right? It asks you, would you like to add a message? Now, it doesn't really do it on the app, but it will do it on the computer. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Just hit it on the app.
Oh, it is?
Oh, yeah, you got to click more.
And then you can do it.
Power user.
Okay,
Power
excellent.
user right there.
Power user. Awesome. That I did not. That's awesome.
Work.
So what you want to do is say something in that message feature. It's free. It's not LinkedIn Messenger. It's or InMail. Just say, hi, we have several connections, even if you hadn't met them in person. But go look at the connections that you might have in common. This is the one I often will do, as we have several connections in common to include, and I will name drop some people that I know, that I've met, that I think that they might know as well, to personalize it, because there's a lot of, weird stuff on LinkedIn too, to kind of frame it that I'm not a spammer or a hacker.
Yeah, don't start your message with, hey, girl.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Hey, girl, I like
you can once I know you, but.
Smile caught my eye. That's my
hey, girl, I like your profile, right, Yes, I've had a few of those.
So just one more point I wanted to make about the networking.
Yes, do that, though, yes.
When
Perfect.
you host an event, if at all possible, figure out who is a first-timer.
Oh, that's a great tip.
And then try and give them an introduction to somebody who's not a first-timer, who can go with them to get that first, cup of soda or whatever, so that they're not feeling isolated from the moment they walk in. Because I feel like there's a 5-minute or some rule. Like if you walk into an event and you scan the room and you don't see anyone you got to fight the impulse to leave, because there's a reason for you to go there. You want to meet people, you want to network, you want to build your community. So make it as easy for people to do as possible.
I love that. Thank you.
Great. So I have a couple of principles that I try to always use when it comes to networking and creating relationships. The first one is the idea of building up social capital. So I tend to build my relationships intentionally, and I try starting with offering something. Right? It's not necessarily that I need anything back from that person, but I'm sure that down the line, down the road, they'll be able to repay that favor. So starting with that concept of, hey, this is someone that I really appreciate in my industry, and I would like to get to know them better and build a relationship. What is it that I can offer to that person, right? And so it takes a little bit of time, and it needs to be a very intentional process. But in my experience, it has worked pretty well. The second one is when I meet new people as part of this process, I try to talk about my passions, right? Because this is when I find myself to be the most authentic and genuine, right? So something that I love, and it could be industrial cybersecurity, but in some cases it could be something completely unrelated to that, whether that's, how many female Supreme Justices we should have on the U.S. Supreme Court, and, other things, or my love for RBG because she's just, so cool, or other things. But, because people, at the end of the day, we are still very much humans that at the end of the day, outside of the business, we've got other ambitions and passions. And so being able to connect on that level adds a level of genuineness that I find easier to do when I'm talking about something that I truly care about versus just, hey, let's get a deal done, right? So those are my 2 pointers.
Excellent. Thank you, Galina. Wendy?
So I'm going to take a completely different tack. I'm not good at networking. Small talk just small. Well, I can do it, but
do you
small
feel like
talk.
That's out of your comfort zone a little bit?
It's way out of, and it has been, ever since. I think it's just innate to my personality. I'm an introvert at heart, and small talk makes me itch. And but you do learn how to fake it. I don't use LinkedIn very much, except once in a great while. But almost all of the jobs that I have gotten in the last 10 years, I owe to Twitter. Just having the discussions through there and meeting people other people through there. That has helped a lot. I've also been have the advantage of having been an industry analyst for 5 years. And the thing is, when you're an analyst, everybody wants to meet you. So as soon as I, changed my LinkedIn profile and said I was an analyst, and as soon as the press release went out, I got all sorts of requests from people. And it had nothing to do with me because they didn't know me. It was the position. So I ended up meeting, hundreds and hundreds of people at conferences and online and everything and through briefings. But what I do like to do is introduce people to other people. So if someone comes to me and says, I'm working on this, I will immediately start thinking of, I know somebody else who's doing that. Do they know each other? And if not, I offer to introduce them. So turning it around and focusing it on what I can do to help other people network is a lot more comfortable for me than, having somebody come up to me and say, please, I really want to connect with you. So that I would recommend that. If you want to talk with people, do talk about your passions, talk about what you're interested in, bring them an interesting thing to discuss, not just, hi, we know the same people, because I'll be going, I know. And
which is
I'm not surprised.
My LinkedIn message when you're limited to 100-some words, but letter characters. But
yeah. Oh, and please don't ask me to pick my brain because there's no brain left for you to pick. I'm sorry.
I like that one too. Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah. Well, ladies, we're going to wrap up in a few minutes here. So why don't we just kind of share some final thoughts and offer, some words of wisdom. And I'm not dating any of us, but, we've got some great experiences and great backgrounds. But what kind of advice can you give women, minorities, young professionals about the best way that they could stand out in the building their network, as well as just thriving in a cybersecurity career? So I'm going to start with you, Jennifer. We have 5 minutes left, so this is sort of a rapid-fire kind of way to go. All right. Words of wisdom.
I would definitely say stick with it. It's an amazing industry, as everybody has kind of commented. We have come a long way. There is a ways to go. I would also agree, be confident. Be confident in your skills. Don't believe you have to know everything and have done everything before you do something. Lord knows I had never been a CEO before I became a CEO. It hadn't even occurred to me. But take the leap. Have the confidence and know that it's okay to fail. Pick yourself up and keep on going.
And learn from those failures.
And learn from it, yes. Make the same, keep making mistakes, just make new ones.
All right, I'm going to make a pitch. I'm going to make a pitch that you all know that November 11th through the 16th, yep, those are the dates, National Cybersecurity Career Awareness Week. And if you go to the website, which is NIST.gov/NICE/NCCAW, just use Google or Bing or whatever, every one of us can do something to mentor others, to share information about your career with young people. That's probably most crucial. And for folks who are just entering the field, amazing affinity groups out there. So many wonderful ones, whether it's, around Capture the Flags and things of that nature, or like ICMCP, really just however you identify yourself, I'm sure there's a cybersecurity affinity group for you.
Excellent.
My message is one of my kind of personal missions is fighting unconscious bias. So I truly believe that the one thing that is really holding us back as a society of recognizing women and minority groups is really the unconscious bias. There really isn't so much open discrimination to fight anymore, and we're lucky from that perspective because in other parts of the world that is still an issue. So what does an unconscious bias look like? It looks like, the folks that bring my food in the hotel and they ask me, oh, are you with the airlines? Because I spend a lot of time, in the hotels and I'm blonde. And I'm like, here's a teachable moment. Next time you see a woman in a hotel that's blonde, maybe assume that she's like a space exploration scientist or a brain surgeon or, air on the other side rather than, are you with the airlines? And so I have found all kinds of creative ways of bringing up the topic, right, because most people are just not conscious of it. They don't mean to offend. It has happened in this conference. I was here half of the day yesterday and a few hours today. It has already happened 3 times. I'm not going to tell you who and how, but it happens all the time. People do not mean to offend. It is just unconscious. I do it myself. Women do it as well. So it's not just men doing it to women. It kind of goes across both ways. So just when it happens to you, take a breath, smile, and I usually incorporate a joke or say something funny about it, but make it conscious, because once we make it conscious, this is how we learn, as opposed to, going back home and feeling crappy because someone didn't recognize you.
Thank you.
That was fantastic. That was great.
Was.
Thank you. The one thing that I would leave you with is that along with unconscious bias, I want to make sure that we have a lot of allies in the room, I can tell, and thank you for being here, that we don't exceptionalize women and minorities, and we don't talk about like women in security as opposed to normal people in security. Wait, what? we don't want to do that. So make sure, exactly. I do not want a pink laptop. I think we can do so much to include people without making it, a reason for celebration. Oh, if you think about, look, I brought a gay person to, you don't want to go there. So think about what you're unconsciously assuming is the default and smash that default. So, don't let yourself be the default. Don't let other people be the default. Make everybody part of your default life.
Ladies, you were amazing. Can we give them a round of applause? Great job. Do we have a question in the back? Did you want?
So let me just kick things off. NICE actually did a webinar on this topic that's recorded and on our website. And there is some amazing leadership being shown by companies like Microsoft and HP to create programs to embrace young people on the neurodiversity spectrum and make sure that from the recruiting process through onboarding, training, and management that everyone understands how to make it as inclusive an environment as possible. So.
Yeah, and as a parent of someone who's on the spectrum as well, I absolutely agree that we need to be opening the tent more and not trying to force people who are neurodiverse into, very prescribed roles, and that includes not forcing them to go to golf outings if they don't want to go to golf outings. There are a lot of tools that we can offer people on the spectrum, including working at home if they prefer that. Giving them special, affinity groups if that's what they want, or, embracing and bringing them into, the bigger group. It starts with making sure that you're embracing all sorts of people and all sorts of ways of thinking in your corporation in large, and then also reaching out and saying, what more do you need that I can do for you?
Thank you very much. And thank you for asking that question. I have not had that question come up before, so thank you for asking that. And I'm so excited that we had Two great answers here today.
Yeah, and there are lots of women on the spectrum too. We don't always realize it, but yes, it is. It's an equal opportunity thing.
Well, thank you for having us today, and thank you for making the time to be with us. Really enjoyed all your commentary. I hope all of you enjoy the rest of the program. I will be speaking again at 2:40 today. I hope that you'll join me for my featured speaker session, and I look forward to seeing you outside. Thank you.